Hello and welcome to the Bowling University studio from the International Bowling Campus in Arlington, Texas. This is the Profit Break. If you're joining us for the first time, we're glad you're here. Give us 15 minutes and you'll be well on your way to improving yourself and your profitability. On today's show, I want to take a moment and say congratulations to our first-time leaders who are watching, or should I say condolences. Don't worry if you're feeling a bit overwhelmed and this leadership thing isn't quite what you thought it would be. Now, keep in mind that we have another Profit Break episode about leadership and first-time leaders, but today we're going to talk about a few things to avoid some pitfalls and things to help you in this leadership journey. But we're not going to be able to make you an expert leader overnight. So let's jump right into today's show, and we'll start talking about some of those pitfalls. So when we're talking about first-time leaders, in a previous Profit Break episode, we talked about some tips to help you in this leadership journey. And one of the biggest things that we talked about was that we manage systems and we lead people. Again, we manage systems and we lead people. So we've got to understand what that means and how that applies. And so I'd encourage you to go back and watch that first episode on first-time leaders so that way you can see those 5 tips that we talk about. One of those is leadership is not a title. Again, just because you're named a manager or you're named, you're put in a position that you're in charge of people, you really got to understand that that doesn't make you a leader. And that we've got to understand that we've got to lead by example. And that doesn't mean you're pushing somebody out of the way and you go, hey, watch how I do this. We've got to coach them along and work with them and be a part of the team and say, hey, guys, get behind me, let's go, as we start to work through our mission and accomplish those goals. And the only way you can do that in that leadership role is by building trust. And that's going to be your most valuable asset, is to have the trust of your team. That way you can take them from just being compliant from what you're asking them to do to being committed to what your mission and your goals are, to get them to really excel at their positions. And that's just like a great coach of a sports team. When you have that trust of your team, they're going to listen, they're going to push harder than they ever have, and that helps you with building that trust as far as that team. The other thing is increase emotional intelligence. And the simple thing I could say for this, and we spent some time on this in the previous episode, is just listen. Listen, listen, listen. And don't listen to respond. Listen and empathize. Not saying agree, but you got to understand where that person's coming from. What is their perspective? What are they feeling? So that way you can actually help them grow as well and be able to resolve some issues and different things that are going on, whether it be with an employee or a guest. But listening is the key to increasing your emotional intelligence. And then last but not least, we have to understand that, hey, you know what? We may have got to this position because we were good at what we do. But in this role, now as a leader, you can't do everything by yourself. As much as you want to and as much as you think you're going to get it done, you're going to stress yourself out. You're going to cause yourself to have extra stress and headaches and health issues, and you're not going to be as successful as you were when you were the doer. So we've got to work through and with people on our team to be able to get things accomplished. And sometimes that means that we got to ask for help. And that's not a sign of weakness, asking for help. So today we're going to talk about pitfalls to avoid as a first-time leader. A lot of times we get into this role, as I mentioned, and this leadership journey, and we've just kind of moved up through the ranks because we're good at what we're doing. But we've got to kind of understand and look at some areas that we can avoid these pitfalls so that way we can continue to grow and develop as leaders. So one of the biggest things that we've got to focus on as a first-time leader, and this really impacts everyone that is in your charge, is micromanaging. So as the leader, you've got to resist that urge to monitor every guest interaction, to be involved in every little thing. And if you're a leader and you have cameras in your facility and you can pull them up on your phone, don't use those to manage when you're out of the building. Those cameras are to go back and review situations, but don't micromanage every little thing. Think about yourself maybe as an employee and how it made you feel when you were micromanaged. wasn't a very good feeling. And as a leader, you're putting your team in a situation where they're always going to come to you and ask for stuff. So we've got to try to curb and avoid this micromanaging style. And when you think about micromanaging, where does it come from? It's a lack of trust. It's a lack of having standards. If we have standards in place and we say, here's what we do, here's how things should go, here's how we handle a guest that's unhappy with X, Y, or Z, and then we've got to empower our team to take care of that. If we have those standards, we empower our team, we develop that trust, then we don't have to micromanage. And that's a huge thing. And that's one way of freeing up some time and getting something off your plate that can easily be handled by your team. Now, there's always going to be an exception, so don't manage to the exceptions where you're going to have to, something gets escalated and you're going to have to get involved. That's understandable. But for the most part, the day-to-day stuff, if you have good standards in place, your team is trained to those standards, and you've empowered them to use those standards to accomplish the mission, then they trust that they're going to do what you would do in that situation, and they'll be able to take care of it and move forward from there. The second thing that I want you to think about, and we talked about this in helping you as tips to be a successful leader, but it can also be a situation that we've got to avoid the pitfalls with communication. So often we have issues and things that arise in the facility, and it's just simple communication missteps that cause the issue. So I want you to think about, we've all had the situation where, hey, we're happy, the mechanic's finally going to do some work in the back. No offense to your mechanics, but this is what a manager may think is, man, finally they're going to work on lane 8. We've been having problems with lane 8 for days, weeks, or months. And they come to you and say, hey, I need to take lane 8 out of service, and I need 7 and 9 as well. And right away, you're going, well, I've got a full house coming in because we booked a group. And some simple communication strategies, no matter where you are in the building, can help avoid the frustration that the mechanic's going to have and that frustration that you're going to have. And we can prevent this by simple communication, whether it be as I call a shift meeting or just a shift update before everybody gets started. Not saying that we've got to have meetings all the time. It's hard. We've got a lot of part-timers, so getting together and having full-on team meetings can be tough. But we can have little ways of doing this as we're starting shifts or as we're coming into work. And there's a lot of technology that's available. For a lot of us, we schedule through a scheduling app, and we share information through either it's a group or an app or a text or whatever. So figure out what it is that can help you with these scheduling challenges and making sure that we're communicating to everyone that needs to be involved what our plans are. Because a little bit of communication and planning from the mechanic and a little bit of communication and planning from the front of the house, we can easily avoid this frustration. And that kind of leads to the next thing that we're going to talk about is really feedback. And feedback can be an area that a lot of times can be a big pitfall because we don't always get feedback from everyone. A lot of times we're asking feedback from our guests, but we've got to think about when we're making changes, we're doing things, we've got to ask feedback from our team members as well, because a lot of times our frontline team members, they're the ones that hear the most from our guests. They interact the most with our guests that come into our facility. So we've got to get that feedback from them and get them involved in the process, make them feel like they have some ownership in the process if you're making a change or developing a new program. That feedback is huge. And then feedback has to be given to your team members. And this comes into that open communication because your team members see the cash register drawer full, they see all this stuff happening. They don't understand sometimes what's happening on the backside, that there's a light bill that has to get paid, there's employee insurance that has to get paid. So they just think, hey, the ownership's getting filthy rich. And sometimes that feedback is to say, hey guys, did you know that our electric bill last month was X number of dollars? And that's kind of eye-opening. We have to understand that a lot of times when you have places that have a lot of rumors and water cooler talk, that it's because there's not open communication with the leadership. So we have to really think about this, that rumors are nothing more than feedback left unspoken. We say that again, rumors are nothing more than feedback left unspoken. So we've got to give feedback and have that feedback with our team as well. Which leads us into the next one, that, you know what, in our role as leaders, we cannot ignore conflict, and we've got to address it promptly because it's never going to just go away. So often we're like, it'll work itself out. So whether it's conflict with employees or it's an employee and a guest or two guests, we've got to resolve and jump in and resolve that conflict right away. We just can't ignore it. And that's where having that emotional intelligence and being able to listen will allow us to up our skills to be able to resolve this conflict quickly. So again, don't let it fester. Don't let it fester and just knock it out right away. And that kind of leads into the next section, that as your team is growing and developing and you're developing as a leader, we have got to commit to training and development. Training and development is huge. And for a lot of us, we just are like, hey, you know what? You're going to work Friday night with Robbie, and he'll show you everything you need to know. Or you're going to work Saturday in the bar with Sarah, and she's going to show you everything you need to know to be a bartender. And that's not a structured training and development process. We've got to put a process in place because we've got to understand that if we don't train them and they stay, how much business are they costing us? Because some of you may argue that, well, if I train them and they leave in a few months, I've spent all that time and money and effort in training them. My question to you is, if you train them and you don't train them and they stay, how much business are they running out the door by giving poor guest service, or they're doing things that are not your standards? So we've got to spend some time, give them some basic training, give them the tools to be successful. And if you've given them the tools and you've given them the chances to be successful, and maybe this isn't just the right thing for them, then we can part ways and move on. But if we're expecting them to do things that we haven't given them those tools, those basic skills to be successful, then it's on us as the leaders, because we're not providing the training and the development for them to grow as team members to help our guests. So take care of your team and they'll take care of your guest. So in closing, I want you to understand that there is a tough transition going from a team member to a leader. So you're going from a frontline team member to that shift manager. That's a tough transition. Don't underestimate it. Give your team and make sure you, as that new leader, start researching, developing some skills. Because leadership, again, like I said early on, is a never-ending journey. You want to be the leader that jumps in and the team rallies behind you and it's like, hey, let's move the needle forward, instead of that person that is barking orders and going, hey, guys, get this done. I want it done now. As the leader, you should be able to get that level of commitment for them to get it done and get it done with you being involved. And we've got to think about that people don't want to be managed. They want to be led. And people also don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So we've got to understand this as we go on this leadership journey and try to avoid some of these pitfalls and try to continue to develop as leaders, because no matter if you're a first-time leader or a seasoned leader, this is a journey. The learning never stops. We have to continue to move forward and go from there. So just remember that you're not alone, and now you have several things you can go back and work on in this journey. Leadership is not easy, but it is simple if you remember that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. If you want to learn more or have questions about leadership, I'd encourage you to attend one of our management schools here at the campus. Plus, you can reach us at any time at education@bpaa.com. As we wrap up another edition of the Profit Break, remember, when your focus is on growing people, people will grow your business. This episode, as well as previous Profit Break episodes, are available 24/7 for you and your team at bowlinguniversity.net. Plus, new episodes are available every month, so mark your calendar, watch your email, and join us on Facebook to hear about the latest shows. Until then, I'm Gerald Morrow. Do for one what you wish you could do for everyone. We'll see you next time.